Women in Islam versus other civilizations, a comparative look. Let's ask a bold but honest question. Where does Islam stand when it comes to women's rights compared to other civilizations? Because if we want truth, we can't just compare Islamic ideals to modern Western practices, or Western ideals to cultural Muslim realities. We need a fair comparison, law to law, time to time, context to context. And when we do that, something fascinating emerges. 1. Pre-Islamic Arabia, women with no rights. Also, no rights for women all over the world. Before Islam in 7th century Arabia, women had no legal status. They couldn't own property. They couldn't inherit. They could be inherited themselves. Infant girls were sometimes buried alive out of shame. Into this world came the Quranic command, "Do not kill your children out of poverty." Quran 6:151. And for women shall be a share of what the parents leave. Quran 4:7. These were not small changes. They were revolutionary. 2. Islamic reforms for women, 7th century AD. By the 7th century, Islam had granted women the right to own, buy, sell, and inherit property, the right to consent in marriage, the right to education and public life, a legal identity separate from their husbands. And women shall have rights similar to those against them, according to what is just. Quran 2:228. This happened over 1,400 years ago, long before many other civilizations made similar moves. 3. Ancient civilizations, a contrast. Ancient Greece and Rome, Athenian women had no legal or political rights. In Rome, the father had complete control over a woman's life. Women couldn't inherit unless no male heir existed. Marriage, often arranged, and women had limited legal recourse. Biblical traditions, pre-modern. In many biblical laws, women inherited only if no sons existed. A woman's testimony was often not accepted in court. Men could divorce more easily than women. This isn't criticism, it's history. Societies evolve slowly, but Islam's reforms came early, fast, and written in Quran and Sunnah. 4. Medieval Europe versus the Islamic world. In Europe during the Middle Ages, women were viewed as morally and intellectually inferior. The legal doctrine of coverture in English common law erased a woman's identity upon marriage. She became legally part of her husband. Women were barred from universities and most trades. Meanwhile, in the Islamic world, women like Fatima al-Fihri founded universities, e.g., University of Al-Qarawiyyin, 859 CE. Women served as scholars, jurists, poets, merchants. Thousands of female scholars were recorded in Islamic history, teaching men and issuing fatwas, legal opinions. Imam al-Dahabi listed hundreds of female hadith scholars, Aisha, the Prophet's wife, being the most prominent. 5. The modern West and the Islamic world today. It's true, many Muslim-majority societies today have not upheld Islamic values regarding women. But it's equally true that modern Western freedoms are very recent. In the U.S., women couldn't vote until 1920. In the U.K., married women couldn't own property until the Married Women's Property Act of 1882. Equal pay and equal legal treatment are still works in progress. Islamic reforms happened 13 centuries earlier, but many Muslim societies later regressed due to culture, politics, colonization, and distance from true Islamic principles. Unfortunately, the war on Islam by the West is always ongoing and prevents the Islamic world from taking control of affairs. But this will not last. So again, don't judge a religion by its followers, especially in contexts shaped by complex histories. The differences between Islam's view of women and other religions are very numerous. But here we can give some small and quick examples. For example, but not limited to, Islam sees family structure and gender roles as complementary, not identical. Islam emphasizes modesty importance in both men and women. Spiritual leadership, like the role of imam, is typically male, but scholarship is open to all. Final thought, a nuanced truth. So, does Islam oppress women? Not if you study Quran and Sunnah, you will be sure that Islam doesn't oppress women. On the contrary, Islam places women in a higher position. For example, it gives the mother more rights than the father in terms of protection, care, and status. For that, you have to study Islam's early history. Not if you compare fairly across time and place. Like every civilization, Islam has ideals. And like every civilization, Muslims sometimes fall short. But Islam as a system gave women rights, spiritually, economically, and legally centuries before others did. Christianity and Judaism view women in their holy books as despised. This view was entrenched in the Middle Ages. However, in Islam, the Quran affirms a different concept. Men shall have a share of what they have earned, and women shall have a share of what they have earned. And they shall have rights similar to those against them according to what is equitable. In other words, the Quran makes women responsible in life and held accountable like men. In Christianity and Judaism, religious institutions view Eve as the cause of Adam's sin, while the Quran states, "And Adam disobeyed his Lord and went astray." Of course, Islam believes that the door of repentance is open to every person, directly between them and God, without any human intermediary or salvation, as they claim.